Mira, güey, va gritando el vato.
O sea, peloteado, güey, como quiere que. Lo van a andar como si fueran marranos, güey.
Ya se murió que él. Como se puede meter con la maña de aquí, perro. Pero no queda salga mucho celular, güey.
No, pues no se ve, no estoy mirando.
Mames, que viene, güey, la ley.
¿En dónde?
Ah, mira, viene la huerca corriendo. Viene la ley, güey. Mira, la huerca esa corriendo. Déjala, que no se meta, se la lleva la chingada también. ¿Ya lo subieron?
Espera, para.
Mira, güey. Ese ya va a estar muerto, a ver, casi.
Casi.
Mira, había otro corriendo, mira, con armado, mira.
Welcome, and all American Cartel members, Anons, Facebook friends, Twitter followers, random YouTube viewer, BitChute viewer, TikToker, Redditor, GLPer, 4chaner, and anybody else that might be watching. Thanks for joining me. My name is Julio. I am the Theorizing Theorist, and today we're going to be discussing these cartels, people. These cartels. And before we begin on the notorious cartels, we're going to speak a little bit on the most notorious of them all, and that is Kappy's Cartel. Now, if you haven't heard, I started a new channel, Season 6, and what that means is my 6th channel begins April Fool's Day on April 1st. Now, don't be a fool and miss out on this chance at seeing some very incredible work on my part, if I do say so myself, coming April 1st. And the season 6 should be all focused on one specific case, and that is, if you could imagine by the name of the channel, Isaac Kappy. And it's going to be great, it's going to be fun, it's going to be grand. I spoke to my lawyer, got permissions and whatnot, so looks like we're good to go. But again, I need to build up the subscriber base before I begin dropping all this wonderful content that you guys, I guarantee, are going to, especially if you've been following the Isaac Kappy saga. But when you see how far this reaches and what it reaches into, you're going to understand a little bit more of how I became just a simple LARPer, live action role-playing investigator, armchair detective, whatever you want to call it, to being involved in the game somehow. And at first it was scary, and now, well, I'm not going to say much more, but I'll say that for season 6. Again, check the description box down below. There should be a link to the backup channel or the new channel, the season 6 channel. That is going to be the channel where I'm going to try to maintain focus on Isaac Kappy. And then here I'm going to, this is still technically the 5th channel that I've had. So, but it is out of commission as far as it's locked up. It never will be monetized, which is fine. But I have a feeling it's going to be taken down soon. So I'm going to go ahead and start building up my 6th channel, like I said. Anyway, so now let's discuss this whole case. Now, I found an article I wanted to read to you and give you some backstory to, I guess. But to me, this is unacceptable. One, the apology, although at first I dismissed it and thought this isn't enough, blah, 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 blah. And then I could start to see, like, you know what? They obviously feel bad, but then I started thinking they don't feel bad. They're scared. They're scared of the repercussions, right? And they know now shit is going to come upon them, with or without the permission of Mexico. Mind you, we could do what we're doing secretly, right? What we do in Afghanistan and Iraq and all these other places where, you know, maybe not so much in secret, but at a certain point, okay, we'll fuck up on a couple of bombs, kill a couple of your main spots, and then be like, oops, what are you going to do about it? Not a damn thing is the answer. So With that said, before we continue, make sure you check the description box to subscribe to the backup channel and for ways to donate. I should have a Cash App link down there at least. Click that and it accepts PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, and any other digital wallet currency you may have. So with that said, I'm going to bow out here with my typical, and make sure you're subscribed, liking, and commenting, and as always, to God be the glory. Mexico's president slams calls for U.S. military to target cartels. López Obrador denounces Republican-led push for U.S. military intervention after fatal drug cartel abduction of Americans. Mexico does not take orders from anyone, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador says. Henry Romero Reuters. That's from him, I guess it's quoting him. So this is March 9th, 2023. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has rejected calls for the United States military to intervene to stem drug cartel violence in Mexico, saying such a move would violate the country's sovereignty. During a news conference on Thursday, López Obrador said his government was not going to permit any foreign government to intervene in our territory, much less that a government's armed forces intervene. I think they're trying to say to intervene. In addition to being irresponsible, it is an offense to the people of Mexico, he said, adding that Mexico does not take orders from anyone. On Wednesday, Texas Republican Dan Crenshaw released a message in Spanish asking López Obrador why he opposed a proposal the congressman introduced in January authorizing U.S. military force to target drug cartels in Mexico. The cartels are at war with us, poisoning more than 80,000 Americans. And I think it's important to highlight that word Americans because we are all Northern Americans, okay? It's time we realize that. Okay, we are not telling, does not take orders from anyone. We're not anyone, all right? We're all Americans here. You will take orders from a fellow American and like it, okay? So anyway, it's time we directly target them. My legislation will put us at war with cartels. Well, did I skip something here? Creating a crisis at our border and turning Mexico into a failed narco state, Crenshaw said in a statement on January 12th about the proposed legislation. It's time we directly target them. My legislation will put us at war with the cartels by authorizing the use of military force against the cartels. We cannot allow heavily armed and deadly cartels to destabilize Mexico and import people and drugs into the United States. Highlighting the word people, I would say. So, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham on Monday also said in a Fox News interview that it was time to put Mexico on notice. He advocated introducing legislation to classify some Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist groups. And there's a tweet right there. 2 of the 4 Americans kidnapped by the cartels in Mexico were murdered, and we still haven't declared the cartels a military target. It's time we authorize military force against them. Are you listening, López Obrador? Oh, we tagged him. I like that. We would love for you to be a partner. Help us help you. And let's continue reading, I guess. Drug cartel violence in Mexico has come under renewed scrutiny in the U.S. after 4 Americans were kidnapped by armed men last Friday. The 4 Americans were hauled off in a pickup truck after unidentified gunmen fired upon their vehicle, the Federal Bureau of Investigation said in a statement at the weekend. All 4 Americans were placed in a vehicle and taken from the scene by armed men. A Mexican citizen was killed in the incident, which took place as drug cartel factions tore through the streets, Tamaulipas Governor Americo Villarreal said. The U.S. citizens had crossed into the northeastern Mexican city of Matamoros across the border from Brownsville, Texas, for a medical procedure. The city, however, has been beset by violence linked to drug trafficking and other organized crime. Mexican authorities frantically searched as the cartel moved the 4 Americans around, even taking them to a medical clinic to create confusion and avoid efforts to rescue them, the region's governor said. I think that statement is meant to confuse us because it all sounds very odd how they were able to locate. I mean, there's like 80,000 Mexicans disappeared in Mexico a year. Or something, it's something like that. I know the U.S. has a similar number, like 800,000 or 80,000 as well. Who knows? But it's a lot, and they don't ever find them, let alone find them in 3 days. Now, the only people that I've ever heard of being able to do that is, and I'm sure there's lots of cases, but the one I can recall readily is the one from the LeBaron clan, where they kidnapped the LeBaron boy and he was released after the Mormon sect went to protest, supposedly, or whatever. They did protest, but I don't believe that's what released them. I think it was something else, an agreement, a negotiation, a payment maybe, I don't know. So let's see. Mexican authorities frantically searched as the cartel moved the 4 Americans around. All right, we read that part. Bodies and survivors were ultimately found on Tuesday in a wooden shack in a rural area east of Matamoros, guarded by a man who was arrested, according to the state's chief prosecutor, Irving Barrios. Now, you notice they don't ever say how they found this shack, guarded by a man who was arrested. So 2 of the abducted individuals had been killed, while the other 2 were discovered alive, one with a gunshot wound to the leg. The survivors were whisked back to U.S. soil on Tuesday in a convoy of ambulances and SUVs escorted by Mexican military Humvee and National Guard trucks with mounted machine guns. So the National Guard, is that the U.S. National Guard, I'm assuming, or the Mexican National Guard? I'm not sure, it doesn't really specify, but I mean, if they're already there with their mounted machine guns escorting an SUV, then we're already there, Obrador, you know what I'm saying? Like, anyway, so on Thursday, someone claiming to be from the Mexican drug cartel that was allegedly involved in the kidnapping condemned the violence and said the group had turned the perpetrators over to the authorities. Isn't that nice of them? In a letter obtained by the Associated Press news agency through a Tamaulipas state law enforcement source, the Scorpions faction of the Gulf Cartel apologized to the residents of Matamoros, the Mexican woman who died in the shooting, and the 4 Americans and their families. Now, if they could only apologize to all the other families that are involved. Now, they'll try to claim that we only fuck with, you know, we make sure not to mess with the innocent or what. Well, you'll hear here in a second. So, drug cartels have been known to issue communiques to intimidate rivals and smooth over situations. Hold on, I gotta check something on my security. My dog's parking in my camera. It's stuck on one. Okay, we're good. Where was I? Communiques to intimidate rivals and authorities, but also at times to smooth over situations that could affect their business. We have decided to turn over those who were directly involved and responsible in the events, who at all times acted under their own decision-making and lack of discipline. The letter reads. Discipline? Well, under whose discipline? Who are they disciples of? I guess one could say. Whose laws are they, or rules are they not disciplined on, right? Your guys' rules, right? Rules that you guys set in place. So therefore you are responsible for the lack of training that these people had and the lack of discipline that they had, in my opinion. So, and honestly, it's a great move on the cartel's part, throwing out the five people that supposedly did it on wrong orders. From what I hear, it was, they were there, they were confused, supposedly. It's all muddy. It sounds to me more like they were there to buy drugs or sell drugs. But I guess they were confused with another Mexican faction, supposedly, and they thought they were trying to impede on their turf. And then I read somewhere that they were there to buy drugs, and the people that sold it to them thought that they were trying to build up a new business, I guess, there. I don't know. It all sounds shady to me. Not sure why they would cover up parts of it, but, you know, whatever. Who knows why they do half the things they do, so. It added that the individuals involved had gone against the cartel's rules, which include respecting the life and well-being of the innocent. Now, who determines who's innocent here? Now, I see a lot of people that they deem guilty, screaming they're innocent, that they still torture and massacre. What's the process for determining? I mean, do they have a court? I'm just curious. It added that the individuals involved had gone against the cartel. I read that part. Still, the fatal kidnappings and backlash could complicate delicate efforts to foster closer collaboration between the U.S. and Mexico on immigration and the trafficking of drugs, among other issues. López Obrador said on Thursday that he would begin a public information campaign aimed at Mexicans in the United States about the Republican-led proposal for U.S. military intervention. What? Excuse me? You're gonna spread propaganda to the U.S. with our permission? Can we go over there and start publicating and promoting and doing all these things in regards to how abrazos no balazos is the most stupidest thing ever? At first we thought it was a ploy, but then we realized he wasn't joking. I mean, you go ahead and go hug these cartel members, right? It's crazy. And they're gonna let them come over here, so that's crazy. So if Republican lawmakers try to use Mexico for their propagandist, electoral, and political purposes, we will make a call to not vote for that party, said the Mexican president. The Mexican president said. Wow. So, I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal. Who cares and whatnot. Anybody that would have voted for the Republicans are not going to be too keen on listening to what the Mexican president has to say or their propaganda. God knows I know. But in this regard, the president is completely wrong. If you don't know my history, I am kind of Juarez, Chihuahua, Juarez. My family was from there, and I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, of course, but my summer home was definitely Juarez. I spent lots and lots and lots of hot summer days.
Dada, I want a donut.
You want a donut? Go ask your sissy. I'm on the phone right now. Go. Sorry about that. My kid wanted a donut. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and bow out here. But basically, in my opinion, I've been calling for this for a long time, for the military, the U.S. to go ahead and just take over the damn country. I'm a proud Mexican too, and no one's saying that you can't keep your monuments and your buildings and your heritage and your bloodlines and all that stuff, your culture, right? And you guys, I think, would benefit even from becoming U.S. citizens. I think it would almost be something that you couldn't convince the Republicans of, right? And to me, this is the beginning of that. The us entering Mexico and finally, eventually, hopefully taking over Mexico and absorbing it and creating the greatest country in the world, which would be the USMCA, the United States, Mexico, Canada, not agreement, USMCU, Union, right? That's what I call it. Trump created that whole USMCA, and anyway. So back to the point at hand here. Definitely want to push and promote the idea of us labeling them as terrorist organization, even though there might be ulterior motives, and I do see that. I might not know everything. Maybe the cartel really are the good guys compared to the Mexican government, right? So I'm hoping that when they target the cartel, they begin with the government aspect of the cartel, because we all know lots of them are paid off. If you're just gonna go after these low-level fucking guys that are getting paid $200, right? Even the guys that killed the 4 Americans that they gave up are 5 soldiers. Does that make sense? So it's not enough. I don't even, I feel like, you know what? I can almost understand the circumstances of these 5 kids that maybe probably could have been brought up in some very dire situations and had no other options. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm not excusing the fact that they murdered 4 Americans. And I love the fact that Lindsey Graham is treating Americans like the Romans used to treat the citizens of the past, right? If you were a citizen, you were gold. Wherever you went, you fucked with the citizen. It was like fucking with the mob. And that's what I would love to bring back in the United States. Even if you were to see some transgender Democrat, whatever the fuck, he, she, they, them thing over there. If someone from Brazil or Mexico or Germany or Ukraine, Russia, China came over here and said, hey, fuck you, you transgender, we Chinese, we fucking hate you, we kill you. I guarantee you, any red-blooded American that lives and dies by the Constitution and the code of every person has free rights, right? And I know it kind of conflicts with parts of with marriage and but that's all different institutions. You'd be hard-pressed this day and age to find a Republican that would say, we want you to stop. We don't want you to do it anymore. They say, do what you want, your life. Just don't put it in our faces. Leave our children alone. With that said, I'm going to bow out here with my typical, and as always, to God be the glory.